It was a strange delivery. A package from a POW/MIA memorial field in Florida, addressed perfectly to a man in Ohio who swears he never ordered anything. Inside were two identical objects, their use not immediately clear, and no note to explain why they'd been sent. The label was legitimate, the return address real, but nothing about the contents made sense. It wasn't junk mail, and it wasn't anything expensive either. Just oddly specific, like it was meant to mean something only to whoever sent it. He brought it home to ask my friend if she had ordered it and what it was. Sounds pretty suspicious. Also, these items are often linked to underground sex rings involving cheating spouses, so someone advised her to file for divorce immediately. Any idea what these mystery items could actually be? This was a tough one, but I managed to figure it out on my own. The POW/MIA address was not anything special. It was simply an address. The item did not come from the actual POW/MIA memorial. Instead, it was shipped from a warehouse on the same street. The address belongs to a furniture company's distribution center called Industry West. Her husband, in addition to owning a marketing agency, also owns bars and restaurants that have a large number of chairs from Industry West. This particular tool is specifically designed to tighten bolts on those chairs. He had requested the tool a while back but had no idea what it looked like, so by the time it showed up with the POW/MIA address, he did not connect the dots. It was found in a friend's father's estate in Europe. He had worked in telecom, so the first thought was that it might have something to do with making or pulling twisted pairs. The handle feels like bakelite, a sign it could be mid-20th century. The handle has a slotted metal piece that can be pulled in with a knurled nut. The handle itself has embedded threads so it can close down on a round post and hold steady. At the front is a narrow slot, almost as if wire was meant to pass through it. The whole thing feels like a cross between a clamp and a guide. Some sites even list it as a mystery screwdriver, but that doesn't quite explain the slot or clamping action. Could this have been some kind of line worker's tool for holding or twisting wire pairs? Any guesses on what this was used for? It was a handle for a wire saw, the type of saw that uses a thin, flexible wire instead of a blade. The handle gives you something solid to grip so you can pull the wire back and forth to cut through wood, bone, or even metal in some cases. These were often used in survival kits or by outdoorsmen. It was found in a house in Bremen, Maine, left behind by a previous owner. The square block is wood, about 6.5 by 6.75 inches and 1.5 inches thick, with a circular hole cut into it nearly an inch deep. At the bottom of that hole sits a thin layer of cotton batting. A round glass piece, roughly 6 inches across, fits neatly over the hole. Attached to the glass is a wooden piece about 3 inches across and an inch high, shaped like a small handle. The whole thing looks carefully fitted, like the glass was meant to rest on the cotton while the wooden part allowed it to be lifted free. It doesn't quite resemble a kitchen item, and it doesn't feel like a standard workshop tool. Could this have been some kind of press storage piece, or even a part of a scientific or household device? What might this be? It was an unfinished 6-inch reflecting telescope lens, still resting in its storage setup with wood and cotton wool to keep it safe during the stages of manufacture. Pieces like this would have eventually been ground, polished, and mounted into a telescope for stargazing or scientific work. It was found in a box of Christmas decorations. The piece is very light, carved from soft wood, about 5 inches tall and 3 inches wide at its broadest point. The face has simple carved grooves, plastic eyes set into small holes, and ears added on separately. A tuft of white yarn forms the hair, while a brown painted cap gives the look of a little hat. Running up through the mouth is a long screw that ends inside the hollow head, but doesn't quite reach the top. The screw base is also wooden, carved to match, and can be adjusted up and down. The whole thing feels handmade, more folk art than factory toy, with no maker's marks to identify it. It looks playful, almost like a clown or novelty figure, but the mechanism with the screw makes it puzzling. Could it have been part of a homemade puppet, a decoration with moving parts, or some kind of folk craft ornament? Any idea what this thing is? It was a novelty nutcracker made in Japan, designed with a carved face on the front. These were often produced with different characters, and some versions even resembled Popeye. A quirky mix of function and humor, it added personality to a simple kitchen tool. It was spotted on a sidewalk in Brooklyn. A small bubble, about 12 inches wide and 6 inches tall, sits above a metal tube that drops straight down out of sight. Around it is a little fence, the same kind used by the building right behind it, which makes it seem like the barrier was added privately and not by the city. No markings, no signs, nothing to give away its purpose. It doesn't quite look like a standard utility cover, but it doesn't seem decorative either. Could this be an old access point for gas or steam, or maybe a capped-off connection that's no longer in use? Any guesses on what this was for? It was a Velux TCR 014 sun tunnel, the type that uses a flat roof curb mount flashing system for low-sloped roofing between 0 and 30 degrees. The rigid tunnel is highly reflective, durable, and even comes with a long warranty, meant to funnel daylight into living spaces so you don't need as much artificial light. Normally, these are mounted above the roof line for waterproofing, so seeing one set into the actual ground like that is unusual. With the acrylic dome exposed at foot level, it seems like it would be at risk of cracking if someone tripped or stepped on it. It was found with old bell and howl gear, sitting on a wooden base with a metal kickstand and those curious bunny ear lampshades. Alongside it came bulbs, ink, nibs, and little title cards, which suggests it wasn't meant to be part of a camera at all. Any idea what this piece of old movie-making kit is called? It was a titler, a standalone tool used for filming titles back in the home film era. You would hand letter or stencil the words, light them up, and then photograph them so they could be spliced into your reel. That's how intertitles and caption cards were made for silent films and home movies before editing software ever existed. Have you come across one of these before? It was found right outside an apartment door, a small strip of thin metal about 1.5 inches long. It looked like part of a tool, maybe something that once had a specific job, but was now just a broken piece. There was nothing nearby it could have fallen from, and it wasn't attached to anything in the hallway. Could it have been dropped by a maintenance worker, or maybe part of some kind of lock-picking or prying tool someone used? Any idea what this little metal piece could be? It was a key used to test emergency lights. The small metal tool fits into a narrow slot on the fixture and activates the internal test switch to check whether the backup lighting functions properly during a power outage. Simple but essential for maintenance and safety checks. It was found attached to an outdoor faucet in Florida, a metal fitting with wide outer threads, just big enough that a standard garden hose wouldn't screw on. At first glance, it looked like some kind of backflow preventer or adapter, but it wasn't obvious what purpose it served or why it was installed. Maybe something to comply with local plumbing codes, or perhaps added by the previous homeowner for irrigation equipment. Any idea what this odd faucet attachment might be for? It was half of a check valve, part of a backflow prevention setup often found on outdoor water spigots. In places like Florida, these valves are required by law to prevent contaminated water from flowing back into the main supply. Since only half remains, you'd likely need channel locks to remove it or replace the entire sillcock. Backflow preventers and vacuum breakers are inspected yearly by licensed plumbers in most cities to keep systems up to code. It was found in an old dump from around 1900 in the eastern United States. It was a small brass key about 2 inches long. One end had a plus-shaped or cross-shaped recess. The side had a small hole through the body. Stamped on it read C and H, or maybe C and K, though the first letter could be a G. It looked like a winding or service key. Does anyone recognize this? It was a gas valve key from the Victorian era, likely made by C and H. McKenney, a company known for producing gas lighting fixtures and fittings. While many gas keys had a square opening to fit standard valve stems, this one's cross-shaped design suggests it was meant for a specific type of gas fixture, possibly used for lighting or decorative wall sconces. It was found among the grandparents' things. Small metal forks, shorter than regular ones, each with a thick prong on the left side. The upper fork is about the same size, likely bought in England, made of metal, and feels a bit heavier than its size suggests. They don't seem like regular tableware, more like they were meant for something specific. What could these have been used for? It was a set of pastry forks, smaller ones meant for eating cake, and the larger one used for serving it. These elegant utensils were once a staple of formal dining and were especially popular as wedding gifts, symbolizing hospitality and celebration. Each piece was carefully crafted, sometimes even monogrammed, adding a touch of refinement to tea parties and special occasions. It was seen on the side of a building in London, a web of pipes and metal fittings that looked half functional, half decorative. The top piece, a curved gray form with an odd angle, didn't seem to follow any normal drainage logic. It looked like it should carry water, yet its shape felt too deliberate, almost sculptural, like someone decided a practical feature needed a bit of flair. Maybe it once had a purpose, or maybe it's just one of those architectural mysteries that time forgot. Any idea what that strange gray fitting could really be for? It was a scupper, a drainage outlet designed to let water pass through a wall or parapet. The gray material around it is lead flashing, installed using a technique called step flashing to guide rainwater away from joints and prevent leaks. Scuppers like this one were often crafted to match the architecture of the building, balancing both form and function. The ornate flashing suggests this one came from an older or well-detailed structure where even practical elements were made to look refined.